Imagine going from sold-out stadiums and selling millions of albums to sleeping in your car with nowhere to call home. Sounds impossible, right? Well, that's the extremely heartbreaking situation Dawn Robinson, the powerhouse vocalist from En Vogue, finds herself in today. At 58 years old, the same woman who once dominated the music charts has found herself struggling to survive. And now, Dawn has finally opened up about the shocking and tragic events that took her from the top of the charts to sleeping in her car. So, how exactly did we get here? What went wrong? And what does this say about the dark and extremely brutal side of the music industry? The discovery of Dawn Robinson. For those who need a refresher, Dawn Robinson was a founding member of En Vogue, the legendary girl group that gave us hits like Don't Let Go, My Lovin', and Hold On. It's safe to say that En Vogue ruled the 90s rhythm and blues scene with their harmonies, style, and fierce energy. But Dawn Robinson wasn't just another member. She was a force to be reckoned with. She had one of the most powerful vocals and striking presences in the group, and that made her a fan favorite. But unfortunately, fame, as we know, can be a tricky thing. And what most people never realized was that while the group made endless waves and broke records with their success, behind the scenes, things were very far from glamorous. And for Dawn, the road started getting rough pretty quickly. But the problem didn't start with Dawn going broke and having to live in her car. It started even before she got the life-changing opportunity to join the band. And even when she finally did, her troubles were far from over. So where did it all start from? And how did Dawn Robinson rise to fame? You see, before she was dazzling on stage as a solid part of En Vogue, before the fame, and before her current challenge, Dawn Robinson was just a young girl with a dream to be a star. But like you already know, dreams don't always come easy. And her journey to the top was filled with some terrible challenges, sacrifices, and struggles. Growing up, Dawn Robinson didn't always have it easy. She was born on November 24, 1965, in New London, Connecticut. Now, when people think of rhythm and blues singers, they often imagine them coming from entertainment hotspots like New York, Atlanta, or Los Angeles. But New London, not exactly the heart of the music industry, but that didn't stop Dawn. Because even as a child, she was a natural performer. She loved singing and had a voice that made people stop and listen. At that young age, she began singing in the choir at church, and shortly after, she began recording music in the studio. However, talent alone isn't always enough. Her family wasn't wealthy, and there were no industry connections to help her get to the top. So she made the decision to carve her own path, which meant working twice as hard just to be noticed. Dawn's journey officially began after she attended a Stephanie Mills concert. After the concert, Dawn's mother was able to get the band to listen to a tape of Dawn. And after listening, they were so impressed that they immediately advised her mother to send her to California, where she could find more opportunities. And so in 1980, at the age of 13, Dawn packed her bags and moved to California, where she lived with an older cousin, hoping to break into the music scene. But let's be real, Hollywood can be brutal. Thousands of young singers and performers flood into Los Angeles every single year, all hoping for their big break. However, in the end, most never make it past a few open mic nights. Dawn was no exception to the struggle. She didn't just waltz into a record deal, she had to hustle her way to the top. She worked different jobs, including a day's job at a dentist, and she performed at small gigs and even clubs sometimes just to get noticed. And she finally did. Dawn got her big break, the moment that changed everything for her. It happened in 1989, when music producers Denzel Foster and Thomas McElroy were working together on a compilation album that was planned to be released by Atlantic Records. But while selecting the tracks and artists, they both got the incredible idea of creating a girl group, which would be modeled after acts that dominated the charts in the 1950s and 60s. They weren't looking for just any singers, they wanted powerhouse vocalists, women who could sing like solo stars, but also blend together in perfect harmony. And so they decided to hold auditions, and to their surprise, this audition was attended by around 3,000 women. Dawn was invited to the audition after one of the producer's associates spotted her at a musical festival in the Bay Area and approached her to ask if she was a model. After they spoke, she got the invite, and Dawn knew for sure that she had to attend. But do you know that Dawn almost lost this golden opportunity? Apparently, when she got to the venue, she became nervous at some point, and she wanted to leave. However, her sister, who attended the audition with her, wasn't willing to leave, and that's how Dawn got a chance to show the producers how talented she was. She walked into the room and she nailed it. The pressure was intense, but Dawn delivered a performance that blew the producers away. She was chosen alongside Cindy Herron, Maxine Jones, and Terry Ellis to form the group En Vogue. Herron was a great choice for the group because she was already a popular model and a rising actress. Before the audition, she was already a successful pageant queen who won Miss San Francisco in 1986, was named Miss Black California, and also came in second place in the 1986 Miss California pageant. Jones, on the other hand, had a less well-known background. She worked as a hairstylist in the Bay Area at the time, although she already had some experience working as a background vocalist. As a matter of fact, she wasn't even officially invited to the auditions, but she showed up after hearing about them from a friend, and it turned out to be a lucky decision that paid off. Terry Ellis was actually late to the original audition after her flight out of Houston, Texas was delayed. However, after the producers heard Herron, Dawn, and Jones, joined by Ellis, they just had to put her on the team. For Dawn, this was it, the moment she had been fighting for. But what she didn't know was that this dream would eventually come with a heavy price. One that wasn't rosy. The dark side of Dawn's success. Fame, fortune, and a life of glamour. That's what it looked like from the outside when Dawn Robinson and En Vogue burst onto the scene in the early 90s. But behind the flawless harmonies, the magazine covers, and the chart-topping hits, the reality was much more complicated and disturbing. What should have been a dream come true turned into something far more demanding, exhausting, and even heartbreaking. You see, when En Vogue released their debut album, Born to Sing, in 1990, it was clear that this wasn't just another girl group. Most groups at the time had one or two standout singers, but En Vogue was different. Every member of the group, from Dawn Robinson to Cindy Herron to Maxine Jones and Terry Ellis, was a lead vocalist in her own right. And even better, their voices blended together in a way that was both powerful and effortless. And of course, the world took notice. Their first album reached a respectable 21 on the Billboard 200 Albums chart, and it was a hit on the Rhythm and Blues Albums chart at number 3. Their very first single, Hold On, was also a hit. It topped the Billboard Hot 100 Singles chart at number 2, and it even earned them a Billboard Music Award. Suddenly, the four women from En Vogue weren't just rising stars, they were superstars. They were everywhere. Their music videos were in constant rotation on the big television and radio stations. Their faces were on the covers of magazines. They were booked for interviews, award shows, and high-profile performances. And by the time they released their second album, Funky Divas, in 1992, they had officially taken over. The album was a monster success, and at that point, they weren't just a rhythm and blues group anymore. They were competing with the biggest pop stars in the world. However, what these women were not prepared for was the intense pressure that came with that level of success. For fans, it seemed like the women of En Vogue were living the dream. But behind the scenes, things weren't so glamorous. The very moment the group reached the top, the demands doubled, tripled, and even quadrupled. The record label wanted more albums, more tours, and more promotional appearances, and there was barely any time for the girls to slow down. For Dawn, it became a never-ending cycle of work. Long hours in the recording studio became the norm. Songs had to be perfected, harmonies refined, and every single note had to be flawless. The tours were just as grueling. The group was constantly traveling, city after city, country after country. And this only meant little time to rest, little time for family, and almost no personal life. At some point, it wasn't just about the music. The industry had developed a certain idea of what En Vogue should look like, sound like, and even act like. Dawn and the other women had to fit into an image that was carefully crafted by their management. And this didn't really sit well with them. Their style had to be appealing, polished, and sophisticated at all times. Every outfit, every hairstyle, and every photo shoot was carefully curated to make them more appealing to the industry and to the public. They had to maintain a perfect image at all times, because apparently, in the music business, if you don't, someone else will take your place. And Dawn, who had always been strong-willed and independent, started to feel like she was losing herself. She had worked so hard to get here, but was this really what she wanted? For example, things got even worse, and their reputation took a hit when they signed on as openers for Luther Vandross's 1993 Never Let Me Go tour. What should have been an exciting opportunity quickly turned into a terrible power struggle that deeply affected the ladies. Vandross was actually a fan of their music, but he still wanted to have complete control over them while they were on his stage. He went as far as banning them from wearing any colors that matched his or his band's outfits. And this really limited their wardrobe choices. To make matters worse, he insisted that the group's backing band perform on the rotating stage with them, and this only blocked the audience's view of the singers. As you can imagine, the fans were not happy about this, and the ladies got an earful. The ladies got tired of the restrictions, and they started pushing back. They wore the colors they wanted and even refused a television appearance with Vandross because they were worried that they were becoming overexposed. Apparently, things worsened to the extent that Vandross allegedly put up curtains to avoid seeing them. However, one day, before a performance, the group walked through those curtains on their way to the stage, and Vandross shocked them by calling the police and accusing them of trespassing. But that wasn't the worst of their problems, because behind all the glitz and glamour of fame, En Vogue was trapped in a terrible financial situation. En Vogue's financial struggles. You see, with all of En Vogue's success, you'd think the members were set for life. You'd think Dawn Robinson and the rest of the group were swimming in millions, living in mansions, driving luxury cars, and enjoying the financial freedom that comes with being a superstar. But that was far from the truth. The group had millions of records sold. They had hit songs playing on every radio station and music videos in heavy rotation on the top television stations. Packed arenas filled with screaming fans, all there to see them. But behind the scenes, things weren't nearly as glamorous, because unfortunately, in the music industry, fame and fortune are not the same thing. And for Dawn Robinson, that painful reality hit hard. To the world, En Vogue looked like they were on top of the world. But the problem was, they weren't the ones truly benefiting from their success. The women were trapped in a terrible contract, and the record label, the executives, and the managers were the ones making the real money. Meanwhile, the actual singers, the ones whose talent made the group what it was, were left with far less than they deserved. Did you know that their record label reportedly offered them only $5,000 each, which is worth about $12,800 in 2025 in advance of recording an album, and then another $5,000 once the final work was turned in? While speaking during an interview in 2021, Dawn actually confessed that the contract stated that they would each receive 2 cents per album copy sold, meaning that the biggest single chunk of their payments was determined by how well their albums performed. Their first album sold over 3 million copies and was even certified 3 times platinum by the Recording Industry Association of America. Now, while this seems like a lot, in reality, each member of the group only earned about $60,000. Initially, the amount looked like a lot to the ladies, mostly because they were just starting out. Dawn even said that the initial $5,000 payment made her feel rich, even though it was nothing compared to what other successful groups like hers were making. But the disturbing reality of their situation dawned on them when they were ready to record their next album, and they discovered that nothing had changed and that all they were going to get was the initial $5,000 upfront, $5,000 bonus, and 2 cents per album sold. Imagine selling millions of albums and generating massive profits, only to be paid peanuts at the end. To worsen an already terrible situation, the ladies later claimed that they were informed that they wouldn't be allowed to write any songs on the follow-up album, and this meant that they would lose out on any songwriting royalties. The songs were written by producers Foster and Thomas, and of course, they received exclusive rights to the songwriting royalties. As you already know, their follow-up album was also a hit. And once again, the ladies didn't see any significant commercial benefit from its massive success, aside from more Grammy nominations. For Dawn, it didn't make sense. She had sacrificed everything for her career. The long hours in the studio, the endless touring, the grueling schedules, and the constant pressure to stay perfect in front of the cameras. And yet, financially, she still wasn't where she deserved to be. The more she started questioning the numbers, the more she realized just how unfair the system was. Eventually, the ladies had the opportunity to meet with a business attorney who informed them that their contract was predatory and that they could get a new one, which was more profitable and fair. However, in a surprising turn of events, Dawn later revealed that when she urged the other ladies to push for a renegotiation of their contract, one member of the group, Jones, ruined everything by going to seek advice from their producer, Foster, who asked her and the remaining members of the group to stay patient and not renegotiate the contract. Dawn wanted more. She wanted what was fair. But the music industry doesn't like when artists start demanding fairness. And that's when things took a turn. Dawn revealed that she suddenly began to feel sidelined by the group and that she began feeling like the label was planning to fire her. Things got worse in 1995. After the group finally got the chance to renegotiate their contract, Ellis was granted the opportunity to record a solo album, and Dawn was also promised her chance to record one shortly afterward. However, she claimed it was canceled by the label because they decided it was best for the group to record together. Dawn also claimed that while they were working on the project, the label tried to prevent her from singing lead vocals because she could leave the group soon. However, because her vocal take proved to be the best, she was left as the lead on the song Don't Let Go, which turned out to be En Vogue's biggest international single. Despite the fact that their third album, which was released in 1997, did great as well, Dawn had grown tired of it all. She felt like the label had clearly doubted her potential, and she wasn't willing to keep playing by their unfair rules. And so, in 1997, Dawn made a decision that changed everything. She left En Vogue behind. Dawn Robinson after En Vogue. Walking away from En Vogue in 1997 was supposed to be a fresh start for Dawn Robinson. She had spent 7 years building one of the most successful girl groups of all time, selling millions of records, topping the charts, and cementing herself as one of the most distinctive voices in the industry. She believed she was walking into a new chapter, one where she would have full creative control, better financial deals, and the freedom to finally call the shots in her own career. But what she didn't realize was that in the music industry, once you walk away from the machine, it's not always easy to find your way back. And for Dawn, the years after En Vogue were filled with promises, setbacks, reunions, and ultimately, heartbreak. After leaving En Vogue, Dawn had one goal, and it was to make it as a solo artist. She had the talent, the experience, and the industry connections. But what she didn't have was the same level of backing that she had as part of a group. And unfortunately, the moment she left, it was as if the music industry suddenly lost interest in her. She signed a solo deal with Dr. Dre's label, Aftermath Records. It sounded like the perfect opportunity, because Dre was one of the most powerful producers in the industry. And this could have been her chance to step into a whole new sound and audience. But just when things seemed to be moving forward, the project stalled, and her much-anticipated debut solo album never got released. Unfortunately, in the music business, if too much time passes without new music, people move on. But Dawn wasn't ready to give up just yet. In 1999, a new opportunity came her way, and she decided to join the supergroup Lucy Pearl. This wasn't just any group, it was a powerhouse collaboration featuring Raphael Sadiq, Ali Shaheed Muhammad, and Dawn Robinson herself, three incredibly talented artists coming together to create something fresh and exciting. Their debut album was a huge success, and it sold over 1 million copies. For a moment it felt like Dawn had finally found her next big thing. But once again, the happiness didn't last. Before Lucy Pearl could fully take off, Dawn left the group. Once again, the same issues of money, contracts, and creative control popped up. She had walked away from En Vogue for those exact same reasons, and now she was facing them again. And just like that, Dawn was back at square one. By the early 2000s, En Vogue was still going strong, but without Dawn, and let's be real, it wasn't the same group fans had fallen in love with. Her absence was felt, and after years of being apart, the group finally gave fans what they had been hoping for: a reunion. In 2005, Dawn rejoined En Vogue for their 20th anniversary tour. It was a moment of nostalgia, a chance to relive the magic that made them one of the greatest girl groups of all time. For a brief period, it felt like the group had come full circle, but the cracks in the foundation were still there. The same business issues that caused Dawn to leave the first time were never really resolved. By 2010, tensions had risen once again. The group was being booked for shows and tours, but Dawn felt that history was repeating itself. She couldn't stand the unfair pay, lack of creative control, and a system that still wasn't benefiting the artists as much as it should. So, once again, Dawn walked away. This time, it was final. She had tried solo music and collaborations, but nothing gave her the financial stability or artistic freedom she truly wanted. And to make matters worse, the music industry had changed. Streaming had taken over. Record labels weren't investing in artists the same way. And without the backing of a major label or group, it became harder and harder to stay in the spotlight. At this point, Dawn should have been financially set for life. But unfortunately, years of bad deals, lost opportunities, and industry politics had left her struggling to make ends meet. And then the most shocking news surfaced that Dawn Robinson, the iconic voice behind some of the biggest rhythm and blues hits, was now living in her car. Dawn Robinson's struggle with homelessness. Dawn Robinson just revealed that for the past 3 years, she's been homeless and living in her car. And this news has everyone completely speechless. Apparently, this entire time, Dawn kept her struggles hidden. She wasn't out there asking for sympathy or begging for help. However, recently, she finally decided to speak out and tell fans the difficult truth. In a raw, emotional video, Dawn laid it all out: the bad industry deals, the burned bridges, and how she ended up with nowhere to go but her car. Apparently, the descent started about 5 years ago when she moved in with her parents in Las Vegas. She wasn't financially stable at the time, and at first, it seemed like a good situation, a way for her to regroup and figure out her next steps. But then, things went south. Dawn revealed that she and her mother had a difficult relationship, and after constant tension and arguments, she decided to leave. In the video, Dawn said, "It was wonderful until it wasn't. I love my mom, but she became very angry. And a lot of her anger she was taking out on me. And I was her target all the time. And I was like, I can't deal with this. Like, I respect her too much. I didn't understand it. I still don't. And it hurt me. So I was just trying to figure it out." After Dawn left her parents' house, she had nowhere to go, but then her former manager finally stepped in and offered her a place to stay. For a moment, it seemed like she had found a way out of her situation. But then it didn't go as expected. Her manager had asked her to relocate to Los Angeles. But when she got there, she found out there was no home waiting for her. Instead, she was put in hotels that were really expensive, with the manager paying for them. Dawn said she hated the instability, and although she kept insisting on getting an apartment, her manager didn't listen. and would always disapprove of the homes she suggested. But the part that shocked everybody? Dawn claimed that her manager was doing these things on purpose because he wanted to trap her. She said, "Sometimes people want to trap you and keep you in a situation where you're vulnerable and depending on them. So I got out of there." As the months passed, she realized that she was still stuck in the same cycle, with no real home, no security, and no stability. By March 2022, she finally had enough. She took matters into her own hands and started living full-time in her car, parking in Malibu, and adjusting to a nomadic lifestyle. Well, Dawn insists that she isn't doing it out of desperation, but instead, it's a journey of self-discovery and freedom. In her words, "I felt free. I felt like I was on a camping trip. It just felt like it was the right thing to do." But no matter how she framed it, the truth was clear. A former global superstar was now homeless. The moment Dawn's story hit the internet, fans couldn't believe it. Social media exploded with shocking reactions, with so many people wondering how she could go from attaining the heights that she did to becoming homeless. After all, Dawn wasn't just any artist. She was part of one of the biggest girl groups of all time. If things were different, she should be living in luxury, not struggling to survive. And the fact that no one in the industry seemed to be stepping up to help her, that made fans even more upset. But just when it seemed like no one was coming to Dawn's aid, an unexpected person made an offer. And it was no one else but her ex-husband, Andre "Dre" Allen. For those who don't know, Dawn was married to Dre Allen from 2003 to 2010. They had their ups and downs, but even after their divorce, it seems like Dre still cares about her. When he heard about Dawn's situation, he immediately reached out, and what he offered her wasn't just a handout, he wanted to give her a job. Dre now works in hospitality and holds a major position with Hilton Brands. He believes Dawn would be perfect for a role in hotel sales, thanks to her charm, personality, and people skills. The job would come with free medical coverage, paid time off, and most importantly, stability. But here's the question. Do you think Dawn should accept it? Or should she get back into the music industry and reclaim her career? Tell us in the comment section below. Don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.